All right, so just to start, I just want to give you guys a kind of a clarification on what we will spend our time talking about. So this is specifically focused on the sustainability grant. We've kind of had some, not issues, but people have thought that we're doing a grant writing workshop specifically for general grants. This is very specific to the sustainability grant on campus for Georgia Southern and specifically for the Statesboro campus. So that's just kind of a clarification that I like to say, so just kind of we're all on the same page. The next thing, and the next thing that I want to do is just do some introduction. So Gabby, we chatted for a second, and Taurus, I think your first name is Justin. But if you could just introduce yourself and kind of say your major or kind of why you're here. And if somebody else joins, we'll ask them the same thing.
All right, so I'm Gabby Wiggle. I'm a sophomore public health major. I'm also pre-med, and I want to start an environmentally friendly period pantry.
Cool. Thanks, Gabby. And Justin, or do you want me to call you Taurus?
My name's actually Josh.
Oh, Josh, sorry. I got the J right.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm right now I'm staff. Actually, I was a student. I was a math major.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But I work in the library, and we just recently got some 3D printers.
Okay.
And we were looking at. They have ways for recycling your excess filament. We're looking at getting one of those through this.
Cool.
They can be
awesome.
Pretty pricey.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Josh. I'm sorry about the misnomer with your name. So just to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to talk about, we might not be here for the full hour, but I just allocate it just in case. So I'm just going to do an overview of the dates and, because there's a couple different ones that'll apply. And then just kind of a little bit more about the process. It's changed a little bit over the past year. So if you've looked at or written one in the past, it'll be a little bit different this year. And then we will talk about some tips on writing a strong proposal. And then we'll look at some examples of ones that have really good collaboration, and another one that looks at one that has a really great overlap of the social, environmental, and economic piece, because sustainability is not just about the environmental impact, it's also about the social impact and the economic impact. And that can be defined in some different ways as well. So, and then we will go over just briefly over the rubric and the RFP and what that process looks like, or the request for proposals, or just the form more or less of what you'll have to be filling out for the specific grant. And then if you guys have any questions, and we don't have to leave this, since it's just the three of us, we don't have to, if you guys have a question, just unmute, and that's totally fine, because there's not 10 to 12 of us in the space right now. So just an FYI about what the composition of the committee looks like on who is deciding on these grants. So it is a combination of faculty, students, and staff. And so it's 3, 3, and 3. It used to be a larger composition of having 9 SGA students, somebody from each college. But we had learned that it was kind of hard to get them all there and get them to all the meetings and stuff like that. So we pulled back and just simplified it to have it 3, 3, and 3. So right now we have, so the student side, there's somebody from SGA. There's also somebody from the EcoReps, which is an environmental group on campus. And then there is somebody from it's just a graduate student, and he happens to be from the Leadership and Community Engagement Office. From the staff side, we have somebody from, I'm like, we haven't met in so long, who is on the committee? We have somebody from facilities, we have myself, we have also somebody from the Leadership and Community Engagement Office, we have somebody from finance, And then we have somebody from housing. And then for the staff side, we have someone from biology, somebody from fashion merchandising, and somebody from geography. So that's what the composition looks like. Those terms are limited, and so they do lapse at some point, and we do try to have new folks come in. So if there are people that are interested, we want people that have interest in overall sustainability to potentially be part of this committee. We want it to be open to everybody if possible. So after this kind of grouping or this grant cycle, we'll have some open positions, and we'll open those in the either the end of this semester or the beginning of the fall. So there's that, and then just overall, so there's 2 different big deadlines to know for this cycle, and it'll be for most cycles in the future. The committee has recently decided that students can submit their grants early, and that is because students generally just don't have as much experience writing. They don't have as much experience, writing a grant specifically, and that's not saying staff or faculty do, but students obviously just have a lot less experience under their belt. So the committee had decided that students could submit by March 1st if they would like feedback from the committee, and then the overall deadline for the grant would then you do your revisions, and then you would submit it before the overall deadline, which is March 29th at 5 o'clock. So it just has to be in, you have to hit the fully submit button by 5 o'clock on the 29th of March this year, and you'll be good to go. So those are 2 important dates. And then 2 other things that are new this past year that we had kind of started to incorporate it last year a little bit, but we hadn't kind of made it fully part of the process. So there's something called an FPR, a facilities project request, and then a space allocation request. These are only relevant if for the space allocation committee request. I'll start with that first. If you're going to be somehow manipulating a space on campus, or you're changing a space on campus. So for instance, we like a water bottle filler, really simple, right? But you are still changing the face of campus, and so you need to go in and do that request. Or a biology professor had done, like they wanted to do bird boxes for a type of species of bird that was becoming endangered. And they would have needed, this was before we had this in place, but they would have needed to ask the space allocation committee for their approval to get that change on campus. I don't think that applies to either of you, but just for future reference, that's what that is. And then the other one is a facilities project request. I also don't know, Josh, I don't know that much about your proposal, but I don't know if it would apply to either of you, but it applies to people that facilities needs to be involved with basically in any part of the conversation. So again, like those water refill stations, if you're changing lights, any sort of operations that are based, that are based in your grant, then that is when you would fill those out. And there are more specific questions we have on our website. We have a FAQ page, and then there's also a video that I did with the lead director of facilities for planning, design, and construction. So if you have any questions or like, would I maybe have to fill this out? Look there first. And then if you're still confused, just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to, if I don't know the answer, I'll figure the answer out, because it's, every grant is different. So then the next thing is, if you are funded, we have started something new this year where grantees or people that have gotten funding, everybody will attend a post-grant workshop, which is basically a rundown of how all of the financial stuff works and kind of the expectations around marketing and outreach. because we want students to know what funded the project. And so when I say students, I obviously don't mean the specific students that wrote the grant. I mean the students that are seeing the benefits of the grant. So that kind of post-grant or, workshop after really just goes through some of those details, and we'll send you, logos and stuff like that that are applicable and relevant to moving forward and starting, actually spending out your money and such. So those are kind of just a couple overall dates and different things that could be relevant. Like I said, not always. And so I just have a small list here for writing a strong proposal. And one of those is having a student write it or be really heavily involved in it. So this is obviously more for you, Josh, or for the staff and faculty side, that because this is student money, we do want to see how the students are going to be involved in it, both on the writing and the leadership side, but also, obviously how the students are going to utilize the product of the grant, but how are they also involved on the back end too. So kind of seeing both sides and just trying to involve as many students as possible, because again, this is their money and we want them to know. And so many students don't know that what this fee is even used for. I mean, you could maybe even argue some students don't even know this fee exists. Depends on which students look at their fee breakdown. So trying to let them know and communicate what their money is being spent on. And so the more they're involved with the process, throughout the whole thing, the better that the committee looks at that. The next thing is just collaboration. And so how many departments are you going to be involving? And it's not kind of a siloed project. Like Josh, yours could be like you're working with the art department or something like that. Or, Gabby, for yours, you're working with housing, or, you're working with the dean of students, or, just going outside of where, what that siloed, which is so easy for us to do and kind of what we're taught to do, is to live in our own worlds. But sustainability really is about collaborating and going across those sectors and looking at how many different people can be involved in the grant or in the project. So that is another one. A third one, which I briefly mentioned, but just a strong component from those 3 different pillars of sustainability. So obviously environmental is the big one. That's the one that we all look at and think of when we think of sustainability. But sustainability is the, it's the combination and the synergy between environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. So there's 3 pillars to sustainability, and that's why it's obviously so big. It can and does apply to everything. It's not just environmental. And so there's a lot of social impacts that come with different environmental things, we had, just one that's really easy is you think about like a landfill or something like that. That obviously has a negative environmental impact, but there also tends to be a negative social impact of them because of the communities that those exist in. And so thinking bigger than just the environmental cost and what's the social cost, and obviously the economic cost is part of that too. So thinking about those 3, and the 4th one is a strong marketing and outreach component for the grant. So again, how are you going to tell people about this and how it was funded? How are people going to learn about it? How are you going to get more students involved? We obviously know it's hard. We have 20 to 25,000 students. You're not going to reach them all. But just trying to really be intentional and thorough about how you're thinking through how you're going to communicate this to other students, and reach more students, or the kind of the as many as you can. I already mentioned this one, so I'm not going to go really through it, but I just have student leadership component, and that obviously is tied into the student writing piece. And then the last one is backing it with research. And so the need is backed by research, right? So what is the environmental cost of 3D filaments? You know, I know that they generally are used, or they are made with virgin plastic. And so having some, just some statistics about what the background is of how much, we could potentially be saving in terms of landfill usage or whatever it might be. And same with you, Gabby, it's very relevant to, period products and stuff like that. So, so those are kind of the 6, like, these are really good ways to have a strong proposal. Obviously not the only things. The RFP itself is pretty thorough. You will learn that. So any questions up to this point? I always feel like I just talk during these. No.
I wanted to ask, actually I have a few things written down on my notes. Mm-hmm. So when you talked about the tips for writing, that kind of also gave me ideas of what I want to include in the proposal, and you talked about the marketing. So technically, what I'm going to ask for in the proposal is, funding for products for a period pantry. But can we also include, funds for marketing? Because I really want to have an educative component where we can have seminars where students can come, and there can be pamphlets. We're going to need money to print all those things as well. And also just students who are online, I want to be able to mail their products to them. Is that some things that we can include in the grant?
Yeah, you can for sure. Obviously, try your best to not do a lot of printed stuff. Like QR codes are so great right now because everybody has the ability to scan them and go. And I think we all kind of know that when we pick up a pamphlet, we don't really ever pick it up again. It's very rare that I pick up a pamphlet and I'm like, I'm going to go through all these pamphlets. It's just, so we need to be realistic about how much is the environmental impact worth, there's always a trade-off of what you're doing, right? Like I need to drink water. It's an impact, but I still need it to live. So that's obviously a really big example, but thinking about the trade-offs is in what the cost benefit of the two. So yes, you can include those. We have funded that before though. Yeah.
So if we have I'm thinking in the buses, they have those advertisements that you could put up. That's something we can include because a lot of people see those, luckily.
Yep. Yeah, you can.
Awesome. I don't know if Josh has a question. I don't want to run all the questions, so go on.
I think you said
you're
good.
Oh, okay, good. What else was there? Oh, so what I'm envisioning right now is I want to work with, like I said, Casey Weaver. They're starting the food pantry, and I want to have a physical part of the period pantry on campus. So obviously, if we have all these different products and everyone has different sizes, we can't just buy all of them and keep them because they're not all going to be taken up. So the idea is that there's going to be a form and every student can just select which product they want, which size, and we order that for them. They can pick it up at the location in the Russell Union, or we'll ship that to them if they're in Texas, like we've had with the organic cups. So if we're going to make it as a part of the food pantry, is that going to be a facilities and a space request form as well?
No, because that space is already allocated to them.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about that if it's already, because Casey's running that, so he already has the approval from admin to run that space. So it's not a new space that you're requesting. It's already a space that is, that's allocated for that specifically.
All right, perfect. And then last question. So the entire grant is a written proposal, so it's not a verbal proposal presentation that we have to do? Okay.
Nope, and I'll go through the form just a little bit. I don't know how much I can go into it because we've changed it to where it used to be just a PDF that you would fill out. It's not that anymore. It's a form that you fill out it's within a software that
Yes.
we use now, versus we used to have people just fill out this, 6-page PDF, and that's how they would submit it. Now it's a different form that's all online.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
So cool. Hello, Kane Singleton. Kane, do you want to introduce yourself real quick, and I'll kind of jump back in of where we're at. So just your student, faculty, staff, and if you're a student, what major, and thinking about what project you potentially are going to submit.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was in organic chemistry.
It's okay.
But I'm a student here, a junior, exercise science major. I also work at the gun range here on campus, along with FYE. I'm the supervisor for FYE.
The supervisor for what?
FYE, first year seminar.
Okay, FYE, gotcha. Cool. And do you have a grant in mind that you're thinking about writing?
Kind of piddling around with like just a bigger emphasis on like recycling, or like, I don't know, like cleanup kind of organization, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, just an FYI, what we have kind of gone over, we talked about some dates and announcements, and some tips on writing a strong proposal. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of those. I'll just go down the list. And if you have any questions, maybe we'll maybe wait till the end so we can get through everything. And I actually have another meeting at 3, so I can't stay late, but if you need any more clarification, we can set up a time too. But so an FYI for students, you could submit a grant by March 1st for feedback, and the committee will give you feedback, and then you'll need to submit it by the overall due date, which is March 29th. There are 2 different potential things you might need to request with facilities that would affect your grant depending on what it is. One of those is a facilities project request, and that is if you have any sort of operations-based things that need to happen, like changing light bulbs or water bottle filler or something like that. And then the next one is a space allocation request, and that's if you want to change a physical space on campus. So if you want to add recycling bins in a specific location or something like that, you're probably going to have to have a space allocation request and therefore an approval before it can get to the committee. So all of that information is on our website, but if you have any overarching or clarifying questions, once you go through that, just shoot me an email and I should be able to help you out. If you are funded, you'll attend an overall workshop afterwards. It'll just be about marketing, outreach, and how to spend the money. And then I have just a list of tips on writing a strong proposal, and that is a student writing the grant and having a student leadership component for the grant, collaboration with multiple departments, a strong social, environmental, and economic sustainability component, because sustainability is larger than environmental. There's 3 pillars of it, which are environmental, social, and economic. And then a strong marketing and outreach for the grant, and then having some sort of research to back up the need. So if you're doing something about recycling, you could potentially pull, recycling numbers you could even do it nationally. Generally like 10% of our plastic is usually recycled, unfortunately. But overall, the amount of recycling nationally, the rate is about 30%, but just having some sort of statistics that back up the need of your project. So I'm going to move into these different examples that I just think are really great examples. That one is more focused on collaboration. And so we talked a little bit about that being a big piece of having a strong proposal. So let me find it. And can you guys see this? Cool. All right, so this one is from a couple of years ago, and it is a grant that was written by, we have toxicology and public health, and then we also have, so we have an epidemiology and environmental health, and then the College of Public Health, and then they also worked with dining in here. And so it's obviously, you can't tell as much with this grant right now, which we've completely shifted around, who it tells, who you're working with. But this grant really, it has 3 different departments within it that are working together. And so this is more or less, the grant is, I'll just highlight this right here. If it'll let me, it will not let me, so I take that back. So it's basically working with dining to find a way to reduce their food waste. They did a survey in the beginning to see how much students wasted per semester. And just an FYI, it's about 500,000 pounds a semester. So they first looked at how much students were wasting, and they then did some intervention strategies. This kind of was what the grant was about. And they found out what they're wasting the most of, which I think is like chicken and potatoes or something like that. And then there was a part 2 of this grant, which was then the interventions that were based on reduction of food waste and the composting that they partnered with a local farmer to do. So I just really like this grant because it's written very well. So you can see in here, they quoted, they have statistics backing up their need. Again, it doesn't need to be this, you don't have to read 18 different articles to pull, statistics, but just like something like, it just has an EPA statistic that, approximately 38 million tons of food is wasted annually, and that 22 million of that comes from colleges. So, just this grant was, like I said, it just was written very well. This also is a grant that was written by a faculty member, so they are very well versed in writing grants. But I would also say that's why, students, you're able to submit it for revisions early, and we give you a couple weeks for that. So I'm trying to remember what other things are in here. So they have how it will be measured, and all these questions are in the grant proposal. And then they had a student basically driving the project. They had a grad student within the proposal that I believe was funded. So right here, they have their budget. And so they have their graduate assistants, which were funded and can be funded. And so you'll see their overall request. And so they have flyers and signage, which is kind of what you had asked about, Gabby. And just student assistants and such. So yeah, that's just kind of a general one that is just written really well, and the collaboration piece is really great. So that's one. And then the other one I wanted to focus on was more related to the social component. And so I think, Gabby, yours is probably pretty strong in that space, obviously. But and this one was really great because it was, again, it was very collaborative. And this is actually from my alma mater, so it's not from here. But it was a collaboration between, I think I can, yeah. So from the School of Architecture, the Labor Union, Plant Services, Non-Traditional Student Services, and the library. So there were 5 different components to this actual grant. And this one was focused on, this actually built a separate space for mothers in the library to be able to breastfeed or be in that space if they needed it with that need. So, and then they also had a community nutrition class help. And I think there was one other, but I don't remember exactly. So this, I really love this as well. It focuses, it gives each of the kind of pillars of sustainability. So social, economic, and environmental. And this is just really well kind of, easy for people to see and understand what the benefits are from, for the grant specifically. So you can see this is obviously different across the board, but this was just a really good one that's socially related. And so this one was one that I really liked from, because it's more focused on the social side, but it still has environmental benefits and also economic benefits. So that's kind of the one, those are the two that I wanted to show you. And now the next thing that I want to do is go over the rubric that the committee looks at. So I will share my screen again. And I'll zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so this is what you're kind of graded on. So what's the outcome? So is there an actual goal? Believe it or not, we have had grant proposals that don't have really a very stark goal of what you actually want to get done. They can get really lofty, and kind of we need to reel it in sometimes. It's like, okay, what are you trying to do actually? So project outcome, research, so it has research to support the necessity and the benefits. How are you going to document whether it goes well, or how it goes well, kind of keeping track of the success of the project. Talked about marketing a little bit. What are the benefits? And that's the social, environmental, and economic. What's the scale of impact? So how does it have an overall benefit to the campus? And how does it benefit students? Because again, this is students' money. And so we really want it to be benefiting students, as much as possible. Is there project collaboration? Yes or no? What is the timeline? Is the timeline realistic? You have 1 year to spend your money. So if you're funded this year, you will get the funding, or you'll get access to the funding July 1, which is the start of the new fiscal year, and you will have to spend that out by the end of the fiscal year, which more or less we're going to say is June of the next year. So it would be June of 2022 that you would have to have it spent out. The budget, does it make sense? Does what you're asking for actually align with what your needs are? Does it generate cost savings for the university overall? That's obviously more connected to the economic piece. Does it involve students? And then what is the overall sustainability of the project? So if you're, we'll say a water fill station, which is it's a really common one that we do. We are going to provide the refills for the filters. We will provide 2 of those that you have to use probably, you probably have to replace like once every 6 months or something like that. After those refills, where is that going to come from? We cannot, we can't do all things sustainability. This grant money cannot do all things with sustainability. It's probably about 125 grand a year, give or take. It's not really a large amount of money when you think about big picture. And so we would like and I feel like I should actually add this to the strong component piece or a strong written proposal, because it's really important for you to think long-term about these projects. And that's also really important for students. And so if you're a student, you have to have an advisor that when you leave, who's going to take this on? Because obviously you're not here long-term, and sometimes faculty and more staff probably are shorter term, but there needs to be a person in place in case you leave the university, or when you leave the university. So that's important as well. And then just overall down here, we have the committee will say yes, full or partial or no. So there is a potential for partial funding. It just depends. It depends on where it falls within all the different ones and the priority, and do we think that they could, the grant could, or the project could actually still happen just with less amount of money, and we would cut some things out. So it just depends on the project and kind of who has submitted proposals for that specific cycle. So that is kind of all I have. Do you guys have any other questions? We obviously still have a couple minutes.
I have a question. You mentioned that we need to spend the grant within a year. So if there's like still money left, that's money we can return to you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, generally, how many projects do you approve?
Per cycle.
Mhm.
I would say on average, so we had a little hiccup this last year because of COVID and because of the transit. So I had kind of told you a little bit about like the transition that's happening in our office, or that happened with our office. So this past cycle, we actually only funded 4 proposals, but generally we will probably fund 12 to 13. And we also generally probably get about 30 proposals. So it just depends. We might see more this round, we might see less. I mean, but usually we get 25 to 35 proposals and we're able to fund. And it also depends on how much people are asking for.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got a bunch of proposals that are coming in at 50K a pop, you know, it's hard to, it depends on the impact. It depends on how much you're going to reach students. It kind of goes back to that rubric. And that rubric should also be on the website too. So
it is.
Yeah. So you
So
should have access to it.
What's the general range that people request for?
From what I've seen, I've seen ones that are $1,000, that are $1,200, and I've seen ones that are $120. We have put a cap on them. I don't remember off the top of my head. I might have to go back and look actually. It's either 50 or 100 that we put a cap on now. Obviously, it depends on the project, on what the overall benefit is going to be. And that benefit is also related to the definition of sustainability. And so it's the balance of the environmental benefit, the economic benefit, and the social benefit. And so finding the balance of those 3 is how we try to have those conversations and fund the specific projects.
Absolutely, it makes sense.
Cool. All right, any other questions? Kane, I know you, we just went through a lot real quick, but did all that make sense?
Yeah, I got all of it. I'm fixing to head into work, so.
Okay. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for joining today, and let me know if any questions come up. Shoot me an email or a phone call or whatever makes sense. So thanks again, and good luck writing. Bye.